Hello and welcome to a special presentation featuring Tom Price and a look at a comparison of the locations for the KED, otherwise known as the Kingsway Entertainment District. Mr. Price, you've comprised this, I guess you'd call it a matrix, and in simple terms, it's what those of us would do if we're trying to make a decision. We put down the pros and the cons. And you've done it all very nicely in this matrix, which you have made available to the city. Uh, can you go over it with us a bit? And I've taken a look at it, and to tell you the truth, I can't find any good reasons why we would put this arena and entertainment uh, center district on the Kingsway. Are there any good reasons in your matrix here?
Not necessarily in the matrix, and I just like to clarify one thing. This matrix wasn't developed relative to the KED or Project Now or any of those. It was purely based on location, a Kingsway site versus the Elgin Street site,
Mhm.
okay? And so in developing it, uh, the cost, and I'm assuming that the city staff will do the cost comparisons and all of that. But these are issues that are relevant to the location. Okay, so for example, the first item there, CS, City of Greater Sudbury revenue change, property taxes. Well, the Kingsway site takes industrial land at about close to 6% of assessed value as property tax and decreases that property tax to zero when the city takes over the land. Okay, so it decreases our potential property tax revenue for the city. The Elgin Street site is all city property already, so there is no change to the city revenue from that. So operating budgets, similar type thing. Uh, if we go out to that site and we don't demolish or get rid of the downtown site, then we have increased our operating costs. Whereas if we use the existing downtown site, there's no change to the operating costs, or very minimal anyway. Securing debt. The debt has been secured. However, did it follow CGS policy? Well, no, it didn't. They awarded a debt contract on the basis of a single source loan, bullet debenture from a single source for $200 million. We haven't borrowed money for the downtown site yet, so it's hard to say. However, in the bid of redemption, can the bullet debenture be redirected? Yes, it can. It's not a secured loan, it is a bullet debenture, and all it takes is an order in council to redirect the money to another project. That's all
Some,
that's needed.
some citizens have suggested that perhaps if it's actually going to be there, it could be redirected towards repairing infrastructure, roads, and
It
that
can
sort
be,
of thing.
yes, it can be redirected to anywhere the city wants to redirect it to,
Mhm.
okay? As I say, it's not a secured loan, so it's not tied to any one project. Securing a developer. Well, so far, we don't have a secured developer based on CGS policy. We never had 3 or more proposals for the Kingsway site. We selected a site, but that implied one developer without competition. Can the Elgin Street site be secured based on bids? Absolutely. It's not awarded to anybody yet. A big issue that's come up a few times, fault lines at the Kingsway site. It's really a non-issue. Yes, there's a fault line there, but I would just remind anybody who feels that that is an issue that the Creighton fault runs directly under Science North. And in fact, if you go in Science North, you can walk around the Creighton fault that is visible underneath Science North. So
Now some
yes,
people have said that's a static site. It's non-movable, whereas the one perhaps with a KED is maybe a little more maybe a little more What's the term? Active?
Well, then let's go to Japan. The Japanese high-speed rail line runs underwater through a tunnel across a major fault line between the South Island and the North Island. It spans over that fault line, and that is a very active fault line.
Mhm.
So yes, you can design for that. It's not a major issue.
But
Okay.
it may cost more, of course.
It may cost you a little bit, yes, absolutely. Footings, the other big issue. Everybody has been talking about wood pilings and that supporting the existing arena. Some of the piles are wood, the others are steel with concrete caps, which is a normal method. They've been there for more than 70 years. They haven't moved. There's no reason to believe that they would move. So they're both easily taken care of. They're both viable. So
And
there's
that,
no,
yeah, I understand Venice is built on wooden piles, and they've been there for several centuries.
yes, absolutely. Once you take wood out of the oxygen, it has a tremendous lifespan. In fact, you can still harvest logs from the Ottawa River that have been at the bottom of the river for 100 years and make lumber out of them. So,
And you could actually do that at Mineral Lake, where an old sawmill was located in Mineral Lake, and still the slabs come up, and they're just as good as the day they were cut.
absolutely, you isolated them from oxygen. Strategic master plan, is the site compliant? Well, no, the Kingsway site is not compliant, and yes, the downtown site is. It meets the requirements of the master plan. Source water protection, is the Kingsway site compliant? No, it's not. The downtown site is, it's been there for many, many years. There is no change to the runoff. There's no change to salt additions or anything else. It is compliant, and it's not in the uh, Ramsey Lake recharge area.
Which is very critical, and which has been brought to the attention through the Ramsey Lake sub-watershed plan as well too. And you can see behind me we have a shot of Ramsey Lake, our most valuable water supply, and I guess we don't want to threaten it.
That's right. Mass rail transit, whether we like to admit it or not, or like to recognize it, sometime in our future, and it may not be that far away, Sudbury is going to have to go to rail mass transit. So is the Kingsway site compatible with mass rail transit? No, it's several kilometers away from the rail. The downtown site is right across the street from the main CP lines, intercontinental CP lines. There are spare lines in that system, and we can easily put into place a rail transit system. Bus transit station, the distance from existing bus transit station is 7 kilometers. That means anyone wishing to get from the west side of the city to the new arena site on the Kingsway will have to go to the downtown transit station, transfer, and travel 7 kilometers to get to the Kingsway site. Whereas you only have 0.68 kilometers to go to the existing site on Elgin. Existing bus routes, less than 400 meters. No, Kingsway site doesn't have any. They have some transit stops in that within the subdivision to the south of the highway, but within 400 meters of the arena, there are none. In the downtown site, there are 23 bus boarding stations within 400 meters. So we don't have to expand our existing bus transit. So that's a pretty big accountability.
Mhm.
Traffic
Just
accessibility. Yeah, the Kingsway site is accessible with some modifications, and yes, so is the downtown one. Parking, again, a major issue for many, many people. The existing 300, within 300 meters, the existing parking on the Kingsway is 0. Downtown, it's 1,000 parking spaces. The existing total for the Kingsway is 0. Downtown, it's 3,000 or more. Future with less than 300 meters is 1,250 for the Kingsway. That's what's in the plan, and 1,000 for the downtown. The future total for the Kingsway is in the plans at 2650, and the downtown is 3,000. So there's 350 more parking spaces in the future parking for downtown than in the Kingsway. Operating carbon dioxide emissions. At the existing attendance level, there will be an increase because it's 7 kilometers more for most of the inhabitants of the city, and we'll get into that at the last part of the thing, but there won't be any change if we stay with the Elgin Street Station. For future attendance, similarly, it's an increase for Kingsway. There's no change for the downtown. Existing linear infrastructure, again, something that is spoken of often by the city. There will not be any need for more linear infrastructure for the downtown. It's already there. It isn't there. There is no linear infrastructure for water, wastewater, power, or side streets for the Kingsway site currently. They are all there. Yes, they do exist. Service level. Summer roads, winter roads, potable water, wastewater. Those will all increase. You will now have 2 facilities to service. You'll have 2 road networks to service. If the Elgin Street site is maintained, there is no change. These are all major cost factors, which, as I said earlier, I did not get into the costing. Grounds, parking maintenance. Well, it's an increase. You now have 2 sets of parking areas to maintain. No change on Elgin. Lawn, stormwater ponds. If you look at the plans for the Kingsway site, there's a massive set of lawn, shrubs, whatever, that has to be maintained. So Parks and Rec are going to have to do that. The downtown site doesn't really change. Downtown improvement, the aesthetics of the downtown. There's no change really for the Kingsway site. However, it will be improved for the Elgin Street site if we go ahead with any of the proposals we've seen so far. People activity downtown. And one of the major complaints of our downtown being a wasteland is that there are no people down there. Well, that will decrease even more with the Kingsway site. It will increase if the increased activity that's forecast is real. Adjacent amenities. Existing hotels on the Kingsway, there's 0 hotels within 2,000 meters. That's 2 kilometers. Downtown, there are 4 within 400 meters. You can walk over to the site. Future, they're predicting 1 within 2,000 meters. Downtown, if the future one at the Lido goes ahead, there will be 5 within 400 meters. Restaurants, there's 1 within 600 meters. There are 20 on the downtown Elgin Street site. There are 20 restaurants within 600 meters. The future, both of those are unknown because we don't know what hotels are going to be built and which ones are going to open and which ones are going to close. Active living. Well, the active living facilities at the Kingsway site are not there right now. They will have to be built. Downtown site, the Elgin Greenway has been approved and portions of that are already under construction. The money has already been approved for those. Shopping. All of the shopping at the Kingsway site will be about 2 kilometers from the arena. Downtown shopping will be local to the Elgin Street site.
Oh, so this is your first page, and there's 3 pages, Tom. We have about a half
Yes.
hour already at about the 20-minute mark. So we're
I'll
moving
keep going
along here.
quickly.
I don't see anything really positive with respect to the Kingsway location based on your analysis here. This is a fair analysis. You're not biased on this, are you?
No, and not only that, this is an analysis that anybody can do. This is not an engineering study. It doesn't need to be. These are all issues that anybody can look at it and say, well, yeah, police, ambulance, fire, and hospital are all remote from the Kingsway site, but they're all right next door to the Elgin Street site. You don't need an engineering study to determine that, okay? Health and safety, residential impact. Yeah, think of the residents on the south side of the highway with the big arena, casino, hotel sitting up on the hill, and you look out the back window or your front window and that's what you see. There is no impact for the downtown site. The impact is already there. Ecological impact. Well, you're going to be taking up a lot of potentially green space, birds, all that kinds of animals will disappear from there. Collateral costs, redundant facilities. Yeah, the existing arena will be redundant. Downtown site, it can be yes or no. Depends whether they build a new arena or whether they upgrade the existing. Peripheral businesses, will they be affected? Well, there's potential for peripheral businesses on the Kingsway site. However, there are none there right now. There is no impact of the Elgin Street site on the peripheral businesses. Increased staff? Yeah, you'll need it, especially if you keep two sites. Economic drain? Yes, if we go ahead with the casino and a hotel, that money will flow out of the city, the profits from those. No change downtown. Construction, and this is a very important one in our days of climate concern. Accessibility, phase with funds availability. Yes, you can do it downtown. No, you can't. However, carbon dioxide emissions during construction, 360,000 tons of carbon dioxide will be emitted. For the existing site, and even with the upgrades that we've seen proposed, especially the retrofit, is only about 140,000 tons, less than half. Corporate fit, financial stress is very high for the Kingsway site because everything is new. It's medium for the Elgin Street. Operating stress is high because now you'll have two operating theaters. Maintenance stress will be high. And I don't even know how we can do the maintenance because we can't even do our maintenance now. We defer $165 million per year of maintenance right now that we can't do for lack of money. How can we maintain these new facilities? Taxpayer stress. Yeah, very high. We're going to have to pay for this baby. Medium in the low down. Yeah, there will be some, but it's going to be a medium. Strategic pillars. These have never been looked at. During the large project thing, they never even evaluated whether these projects met the strategic pillars. Economic impact. Short term, there is an impact, not long term. Long term, there is an impact from the Elgin Street site. Economic development. There's nothing that says there will be any economic development from the Kingsway site. Responsible fiscal government. Well, at the higher cost, that's questionable now. If there's an alternative at lower cost, is building the higher cost one of fiscal responsibility? Quality of life in place, the same thing again. Sustainable infrastructure, no, for the Kingsway site. We know we can't sustain it because we cannot sustain our existing infrastructure, and we'll be adding to it. So the answer is no. The Kingsway site is not sustainable.
Now, what's this with respect to population in this?
Okay, population accessibility. From these centers within the city, those are the number of people living in each of those areas. And in each of those areas, their distance from the site hasn't changed if you stay with the Elgin Street site. However, the Nickel Center, which is Coniston, obviously it's easier to get to the site, okay? However, Onaping Falls is 7 more kilometers one way. Rayside Balfour, it's 7 more kilometers one way. Sudbury City, half of the city, well, actually, I've used a lot less than half. I've said about 20% of the city population will find it more difficult to reach there, the Kingsway. Valley East, the same thing. They come down Notre Dame primarily. And you'll notice that I said Cape-Réal is about the same because Cape-Réal can come down via the airport road and they're a bit closer. But the other ones will be all coming down MR80, going across either the Mealy extension or LaSalle down. There is a major difference in kilometers.
So also, and though this means that there's more carbon emissions by people traveling this greater distance, is that correct?
Absolutely. And from the former town of Walden, it's more.
Yeah.
So this page, all it does is explain a bit why the difference is there. So anyone reading through the matrix, you can see why the difference is there. These are not made up. These are all very real. Uh, it's hard to find positive contributing factors when you compare the Elgin Street site to a Kingsway site. And keep in mind, I'm not talking cost. I'm not talking what the facility is. The other factor, which isn't in here, and I touched slightly on economics, you have to go back and understand or ask why we would be going ahead with any of these. Is it economic? And if it's economic, then is it economic development? Is it economic wealth to the city? Or is it simply economic activity? And they are not the same. Economic wealth is dependent on economic development, and economic activity is dependent on economic wealth. So ask yourself, was it an economic project or was it an amusement project, an entertainment district? Well, an entertainment district is economic activity without generating economic wealth.
Now, Tom, the LPAT, the various submissions to LPAT, the appeals were dismissed. So how does this affect your analysis?
It doesn't affect my analysis. It's still the same two sites. They still have the same differences.
Yeah. So why did the LPAT, dismiss the appeals? Was it?
Well, the appeals weren't to approve the project. The appeals and the LPAT ruling was to say whether the zoning was legal or not.
Mm-hmm.
And all LPAT did and all the Superior Court did was say, yes, the zoning is legal. That doesn't say it's a good project or a bad project. All it says is the rezoning is a legal rezoning.
So really, it's sort of unfortunate that it's taken a pandemic for us to come to this point where we're actually looking at the project, looking at the, as you have outlined here, the actual pros and cons. And as I understand now, the city is going to be looking at this. Have you supplied this to the city?
I've supplied it to every councillor and the mayor, and I've supplied it to the members of our towns, our city. Whether they will consider it or not, I have no idea. I did a similar matrix when the large projects evaluation and selection was done. They ignored it, the city and the council. They ignored it. So they may very well ignore this.
Now, there's also a consideration with respect to, we know that a new library, a new art gallery, and there's some concern as well. We've heard that many citizens feel that, do we really need a new library when we already have one, a new art gallery when we have a historic building? So this, I understand, is going to be also considered. It'd be interesting to see if we did a pros and cons on those two projects as well, which I understand are going to be looked at.
Are they going to be looked at as part of the same study? Because I hadn't heard that.
Well, I think that when I saw that, it said that the Shaughnessy and Elgin Street locations would be looked at, which are presently being cleared off, and there's a consideration that these developments will go ahead. Apparently, I understand that according to Ian Wood, who's responsible, that he says the parties are very excited. Now the parties are excited. We're just wondering how much excitement there is on the part of ordinary citizens. So it'd be
Okay.
good if they looked at that as well too.
Okay, well, my understanding was the Shaughnessy Mental site would be the new arena at that site, as opposed to retrofitting the existing arena.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to we just have to see what happens. I'm just going to stop my share here for just a minute, and here we are back on the screen. And there's a few questions here, and with questions, I guess we always want answers.
Yeah.
And the citizens, it seems, according to a lot of comments we have heard in the media and personally, that they're pleased that the mayor has decided that this project will be looked at.
Yes. And you have to keep in mind that change historically and factually only occurs when people are faced with a life-altering situation. The pandemic and the current economic crisis worldwide has created that life-altering situation for all of us. I don't criticize the mayor for going back and asking these questions now. In fact, I applaud him for doing so. Our whole community is in a life-altering situation. Uh, we should be going back and looking at everything we do. We should be looking at whether we should be going ahead with the junction.
Mhm.
We should be looking at how we do business, everyday business in the city. All of that should be under a microscope right now with the degree of life-altering situation we're in.
Now, just before we close off, I know that you've said that really the pandemic has brought this into focus, but a lot of these concerns were there before the pandemic. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Valet, for example, has been shrinking since the 1980s. Inco was shrinking, Valet took over, and they're still shrinking. They're moving their surface facilities underground to avoid property taxes. Glencore is doing the same thing. They've been shrinking. And I understand now that Glencore and Valet are cooperating on Nickel Rim South and Victoria Mine.
So really,
Victor Mine.
what you're saying is there's sort of three things here. We have quality of life, we have the financial situation,
Yeah,
that we're facing. We have the pandemic, and we're sort of at a crossroads here. And it's going to be interesting to see. I just want to get a plug in before I forget, and that's the coming up. Our lakes are very, very much concern of individuals, and coming up very shortly, beginning in February, the first Thursday in February, there will be a series of 5 water quality experts who will be looking at our water quality. It's called the Troubled Waters Forum, and people just have to go and sign up for free at the website, which is GSWA, that's Greater Sudbury Watershed Alliance, gswa.ca, and find out what these people have to say, because definitely our lakes are something we're very proud of, but are also being threatened by environmental
absolutely.
concerns. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that people should realize in city that we don't have an unlimited supply of fresh water. The only supply of fresh water we have is the annual precipitation. The rest is simply reservoirs of water. Our
It's
fresh water is only precipitation.
a lot of problems, but they can be solved. Now,
Yes, they
if
can.
people are interested in getting more information about this matrix, about the pros and cons of one location over another, how can they get more information? Is there a site, or can they email you, or what's the situation?
Well, they can email me. They all, I sent this copy to them, has my email address on. By all means, contact me. I'll fill you in the best I know how. I
Great.
don't have all the answers, but these anybody can answer.
Well, and I think that there are critics out there, of course, saying that well, this is the way we should be going. This is development. This is the future. But really, upon close examination, some of these claims don't hold up.
Oh, of course not. Take a look at the number of abandoned Olympic sites around the world. I don't need to say more than that.
No. And the debt that it's left as well too. Well, we
Oh,
could go on
horrible.
quite a bit, but we're almost running out of our Zoom time here. So,
Okay.
Mr. Price, I want to thank you very much for your analysis, and this material has been presented to the city, and we understand that coming up in February there'll be more of a description as to what we'll be looking at, and we're glad that this pause has taken place so we all can have uh, a better look and a better future.
I agree. And thank you so much for doing this interview. It's appreciated. And hopefully, if it enlightens some people, we've accomplished something.
Well, thank you very much. Goodbye for
Okay.
now, Tom.